Welcome to the Innovation Conversation, a podcast about innovators, both in business and real life. Hosted by myself, Ricardo Pascual, and Harry McDonough. Today's episode is sponsored by Hyperskill. Hyperskill is a learning and training platform that enables people from all over the world to learn new tech skills. If you're looking to learn new tech skills, this is a platform to choose. You can find out more about them on hyperskill.org. Today, we are talking with George Thwaytes from one of our sponsors, Decodifi, about what it takes to be successful when launching a business. Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Innovation Conversation. Today we have George from Decodifi. He's one of our sponsors at our event that we run in London. George, welcome. Me and Harry are both very excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. So, George, you want to tell us a bit more about Decodifi to our listeners?
Yeah, so Decodifi is a low-code, no-code platform. Essentially, we help startups develop their technology stack from scratch using the low-code, which is very beneficial because it's far more affordable.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's pretty cool. So, how did you get started with Decodifi? Because I know you're a bit of an entrepreneur yourself. So you want to tell us about that journey?
Yeah, so I during the start of lockdown, I was working in a law firm, studying law. I was just about to start my LPC, and then unfortunately they had to let me go because obviously lockdown meant no training contracts. You had to train face to face, so there was no promise to bring me back, and we didn't know what was going on with lockdown. So I took a complete change in ideas and decided to do a business degree online. That then got me to start my first startup, which was SDQR, which was one of the first, believe it or not, QR scanning code systems for bars and restaurants. But we did it very much for smaller businesses, so we weren't charging them monthly fees. We just did a one-off cost, and it brought up the menu, and you could order, and it went directly to the till. So it was a very cool little product. I then got approached by an old school friend on LinkedIn who was doing the same, but making it far more complex, building a full scale app. So I spoke to him about joining up with him, and then I decided the best thing to do was to sell the database and move on. So I gave him all the contacts I had, and fortunately for me, I made a little bit of money. And 6 months later, when COVID ended, he folded. So it was a good time to go. So I then used, whilst I was doing that, I bumped into a chef in Carlisle who was more and more frustrated with the prices of Deliveroo, Just Eat, the standard delivery platform. So we decided to partner up and build a more upper market gourmet food delivery platform. Unfortunately, they took advantage of me. And they took advantage of the fact that I used some of my own investment money and I was the one putting the time into it. So after 6 months of building an app from scratch, we parted ways, and we thought that we were ahead. We being myself and my investor, Dad, very kind parents investing. We thought we were ahead of them. We thought we could get ahead of them and launch earlier, but unfortunately, the app developers, they screwed us around. They launched the other guys before ours. So we ended up launching. Yeah, it was a real sort of fuck you moment, to be honest. So we ended up launching 6 months too late as a result of that. And during that time, COVID had sort of fizzled out a bit. So we lost that sort of market interest there. But then I came across David, who I'm working for currently, the founder of Decodifi, and he gave me an idea of creating a bit of a Fortnum and Masons of the North, gourmet boxes. But I wanted to create it so that the partners were more sort of farm people, so it was more farm to table. So I was getting the users onto my app, and they were essentially just selling their products through us. So I would bring them the business, the customers would use the app, and then I'd take a small commission. A lot of people who are into business might be listening now and thinking, well, that's not going to work, because once they've sold one box, they're just going to put their own marketing materials in there, offer a discount, and people are just going to go direct. Correct. That's exactly what happened. So it very, very quickly fizzled out. I kept on trying to find new suppliers. I kept trying to get them to engage. But eventually, as COVID really did come to an end and everyone went back to their normal living environments, people gave up. It was sort of a second sort of work from home job. So it came to an end. And David and I are looking at relaunching it, but not just quite yet because I'm busy with Decodify. But what that has done is it's put me in a fantastic position today to do what I do at Decodify, which is I'm a commercial director and I bring in the business and I support those startups, trying to get them not to go through the same issues that I had, think about their idea. So a bit of a varied background there, but bringing us nicely onto where I am today.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Thank you for that. I think it's always fun when we talk with people, founders who have grown and evolved, because we can learn from their mistakes. And I think that's one of the big advantages of having such interesting guests on our podcast, is actually what can we learn from their story and from their mistakes. And you just pointed out a couple right there that at the time you probably didn't know what to do differently, but it's just one of those things. They tend to happen, right? And me and Harry, every time we organize our events and even the podcast, we make so many mistakes. And I think having the mindset or the mentality where we say, what, mistakes are part of our journey, so let's embrace them, let's accept them, not as failures, but as learning opportunities, just gets you to the next stage in life and business, whatever it might be, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's important now with what I've been through. I mean, I spent several thousands of pounds building an application from scratch where I just bit the bullet. I did my market research, and at the time there was definitely a market for a niche gourmet box delivery service. But obviously time wasn't on my hands. It wasn't good for me, and also the developers weren't right. And I spent all that money without testing the initial product, which is where MVPs come in, minimal viable products. So lots of mistakes to make there, but certainly those that I can give feedback to people now to hope that they don't make the same mistakes.
So at Decodify,
feedback on that side, it's interesting, because would you say you'd have had the same issues or problems if you did your whole project in London, or do you think the fact that you're up north in Leeds, it was a bit easier to kind of help justify, validate it, raise a little bit of money? Would you say it's regional Pacific what you did?
Yeah, I do think that was a massive problem as well, especially with the first idea where it was going to be food. It was supposed to be hot food delivered, and actually I'm further north than Leeds, so I live in the Lake District at the moment, and during lockdown I was there all the time with my family, and that very much is the nearest towns. They're 6-7 miles away, so to get that sort of high quality food to your door in time where it's still fresh and smells good and it's still hot is really a challenge. A challenge that we were going to get round, but it would have been easier if we were in a big city. Yeah.
Well, definitely, because there's so many opportunities out there for small communities, especially if you can get into it. I've got my little cousin. He lives in a remote region. I keep on reminding him, why don't you do all these bits and pieces? But then at the end of the day, it comes down to you need a lot of certifications and other, let's say health and safety, stainless steel, a good investment into a proper kitchen or a ghost kitchen to really get this off the ground. And even going and finding these fresh suppliers, you've got companies like Wonky Veg who have done really, really well, found the ugly vegetables and gone out there into the market that no one wants to eat. But you laugh on it, but it's the fact that, everyone wants perfection. Even if you look into a startup co-founder is always a perfectionist. But going back to the vegetables, the fact that 60% of vegetables are thrown away because they don't fit a certain characteristic, meaning color, look, appeal, size. Yeah, it was a really good business model. And what you're doing was really good during COVID, especially targeting the healthy options, that especially around schools and families and children on that side. But as you said, it's definitely worth considering or looking back into if you can find some sort of freight forwarder or some sort of...
Absolutely. Yeah. I think you're right, Harry, as well. Is David uses this expression, pissing money up the wall. I think we were very much orientated around making sure that the name, which was Gourmet to Go, it's still a fantastic name. We actually stole that name off Morrison's. We got the IP for it, and yeah, they were going through. They had the name, and what happens is if you don't use it in a 3-year period, someone else can take it from you. But you can obviously put your objections forward. But at the time, Morrison's were actually looking to sell their business, so it slipped through the lawyer's net.
Nice.
What would be nice is if they decided they wanted it back and they paid me thousands of pounds for the name. But never mind, we might get there. But you're right. It's one of those things that with the gourmet boxes, we were aiming to help those suppliers, but in return, they needed to help the other suppliers. You know, the whole idea was don't just put your marketing material in that box. Put the other people's in there as well. Put our name in there, because if you're going to buy the most amazing cheese from this farm that no one's had before, it's not in Booth's supermarket, it's not in Waitrose, it's not in Tesco's. How about buy some wine as well that's from a local supplier outside of London or in Somerset? That was the idea, and the idea is still there. It's just about me creating the boxes. I think I'm going to have to bring it all together.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think it comes down to having that reliability as well. Like a good idea of which you could potentially pivot towards in the future is looking into vertical farm companies, because I know there's quite a few based up in Leeds and around the north, and quite a few in the west as well. But they're popping up all over the place, and again, they need help with distribution. It's fresh produce. Absolutely. It's a little bit more expensive. It's luxurious. There's less pesticides, but that could be something to kind of work on once it becomes a bit more mainstream as well.
100%, yeah. And who knows where we're going to go next year? But I think that sort of dives into the ideas of the challenges and the successes that you have when you're starting up. There were so many successes. We started off really, really well up here. We had a great business plan. We had people interested in investing in us. But it all comes back to the person who started the idea, the founder, the entrepreneur. And I have no shame in sitting here or telling people. I'll tell everyone that I gave away an opportunity to have a lot of investment put into me because I was stubborn about my original idea and I didn't want to change it. So the investors were put off by the fact that I wasn't open to change. And I think that was because when you come up with an idea, they want to take more than what you want to give them to start with, but also, that idea you think is perfect, and sometimes you're not always open to change your ideas.
So what suggestions did they give you to change, or what was the feedback that they said that you weren't quite happy with?
So I mean, the main change is that the app was originally just for, like I said, we would promote them. They were on our app. We would take a percentage, and we would provide DHL, who were the delivery service. All they would have to do is post the food. But what was happening is, like I mentioned earlier, is that it's obvious that they were getting multiple more orders from one order from us. They were putting their own marketing material in there. They weren't putting Gourmet to Go in there. And they were increasing their sales because their products were great. And that's fantastic. But it didn't come back to me. So the advice was, here's your money, but you're going to have to find a warehouse or a small unit, and you're going to have to buy the products in and make something special out of it. So make the best of the Lake District, make the best of Yorkshire, and do it that way. And to be honest, part of me probably was because of laziness, but also there were concerns over the fact that you'd have to buy 100 bottles of that specific vinegar or that specific product and have to store that for so much time before you got the sales. So there was always the concern there. So that was the advice they gave me, and it's still up here, and I will possibly think about reopening the idea in time. But yeah, that was why I didn't change it.
It's also a big gamble, isn't it? Because when you start thinking about having warehouses full of supplies, that's a lot of money sitting there. And I think that's always something that when you're building a business you need to consider, which is, plus on top of that, you also have perishable items, right? So it's not something that you can sell 6 months down the line. It's fine. There's a time frame for you to sell those. So it does influence a lot of the cash flow into the business and does require quite a lot of money as well. So I completely understand why you went the route you did, because I'll probably try to do the same, because, okay, how can I get less hassle and less risk in the business? So, but it's hard. It's very hard to evaluate a business and say, this is the right call, this is not the right call, because some of the businesses we love nowadays, they all came up with those crazy ideas. Let's take Uber, for example. Oh, we actually don't own any taxis. How do you do? Oh, we just, make the call and, make the connection. Oh, sounds a bit crazy, but it does work. So, yeah.
It does.
So how much money would you have needed to raise to have got your startup off the ground? Can you disclose that?
The investor that was interested was thinking that probably between £30,000 and £50,000 would be enough, but I'd already spent probably with legal fees and accountancy fees and marketing ideas and all of that sort of stuff, which wasn't actually that necessary. Probably spent about £26,000. So with the investment money plus my money, I would have been able to do it if I'd started fresh, or started from scratch. And I think that's a massive lesson to learn, from what I did, was that if you're going to start, do something. When that moment hit, when those guys that were partnering with me went and tried to launch themselves and got sooner, and I don't know how they managed to pull over the app developers quicker than we did. I should have just said, right, is there a quicker, easier solution to do this? How can we jump into a market without spending any more money, essentially? And that should have just been by building an MVP, by building a website, using low code, which is more out there now. It wasn't so much before, but I could have just built a website for £2,000 and started that way.
Mm-hmm.
How did you relate? Go on, sorry, Ricardo.
No. I'm curious about Decodifi, because you mentioned low code. I know that's exactly what you guys do at Decodifi. I was just wondering, now that you've been on, I guess, both sides of the fence in terms of actually being an entrepreneur, but also now working with a company that builds MVPs, how are you helping out other people right now?
So we, as a business, we don't just build the product. There are 12 of us, and we work as an agency as a whole. David from the top, and then me, and then two project managers and the developers. We're all a team, so we all work in it together. And the idea is that if you come to us with an idea, we'll help you build that solution. So not only are we tech entrepreneurs and we'll build the website or the app or the power assisted website that you'd like to build, we'll also give you that mentoring along the way, which is really, really crucial, because like me, I'm totally honest, my dad was my backer, and he's a professional. He doesn't know how to start necessarily. He runs his own business, but he doesn't know how to start an entrepreneurial business like this. So having that mentor behind you, having that support, having those people that can sit down and say, right, you've told us that you want 122 things to be put into this application, but your budget's only 10,000. Yeah. It's going to cost 100,000 if you do all those things. Let's sit down again and reevaluate how we can get a working product out there, how we can get that MVP out there. And by doing that, you start with a waiting list. And that's what David and I advise all of our clients that are coming in. We talk to them obviously about investment opportunities that can come from David, myself, or other individuals that we can find them. But also we talk about getting something out there in 4 weeks. Get it live, get it tested by friends, family, colleagues, and then you can then prove your concept and then look to raise money to build it into something more special, I guess.
Okay, so
those are the sorts of advice that's advice that we give, as opposed to, okay, we'll take your money, here's your product, see you again, good luck. And that's what you get with a lot of technology agencies, and we are trying to be different.
So I think the one thing when we met in person, you mentioned about yourself and David and a couple of the others, that you're also angel investors, and that kind of sets you apart from all the other developers and no-code developers out there as well, that you not only work with individuals and give them advice, but you also, if you like what they're doing and see they fit with your missions, you'd also put a bit of money in as well.
Yeah, so there's always the option. David and I'm young, so but I have raised money, I've saved money, and I've invested in 2 other businesses as well, which I'll tell you about a bit later. But David is he's listed 30 out of 100 in the angel investors list in the UK. So when David thought about Decodifi, he was working with a couple of clients building their technology stacks from scratch. And when low code came more important and more of a faz, it was more out there, he decided to then build and create Decodifi for that reason, and that was to engage with startup individuals like me, where I was 3 or 4 years ago, and say, look, stop, you've got this idea, you've got the problem, you've got the solution, how can we build how can we build that stack, how can we create that, how can we get you from spending £5,000 building it to being worth 300,000 in 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks time. And David will invest a lot of time, likewise I will as well, during that process. Not only are we trying to get the sale on so that we can build the product and look after our partners within the company, but also so that we can see that individual grow and their business grow. David and I will either invest our time as part of that investment, so we'll mentor them through the process, or we'll offer a split fee. So we could offer part technology paid for, part paid for by themselves, part paid for by us as investors or as Decodifi, or down the line, once the proof of concept, once it's been built, once you've built that waiting list, as we keep calling it, a waiting list, then we'll say, okay, for it to move to the next stage, £20,000 is needed. Here it is. And a conversation will always be had about that. And that sets us apart, but it's not all just about investment. It's not all just about finding and keeping the customers, the clients that are going to make millions. It's about helping those startups make it worth their while. We don't want them to waste their time and money, and we will be honest with them as well. We will guide them, and we will try and tell them where an idea needs refined or it needs repurposing or something like that to make it work, if that makes sense.
So just want to rewind back slightly on that as well, because you mentioned about giving advice, support, and having David on your books as well, who originally gave you advice and support. So would you say having a mentor, I guess it's very rare to have a mentor like that who would also take you underneath your wing, want to work from you from, an individual he gave advice to bring you into a very high position within the company, to also kind of mentor others as well and bring you underneath his wing. Would you say having that mentorship was really crucial for you? And again, this is what you're trying to give back to others as well?
Well, it is, yeah. And David essentially has been my mentor even now that I'm working for him, and I'm in a position in the company where I'm quite high up now. But he was offering his mentorship and his investment, and I said no, bye, bugger off. My idea is better. I don't want your help. And that is, but in turn, it's turned around, and he said when he employed me, I told you so. I told you it wouldn't work unless you change. But massive kudos, George, for trying. And that puts you in the position. That's why I'm getting you on board. That's why I want you to be my partner in Decodifi. Because now you've learned those lessons, you're able to openly and freely give yourself a slap on the wrist and be able to help those people who might be a bit stubborn like you were and say, please don't do that. Please take our advice. And having a mentor, a lot of investors will just give the money because they think it's a good idea, and they'll want their return. They'll want to hear from you occasionally and get their percentage every quarter. But David and I, as investors, and Decodifi as a business, we're there to support. We're there to help along the way. And it's something as well. I'm an investor in 2 startups. One of them, what I did was they came to me. I wanted to build. I said, it's time for you to build a student party game. It's called Leg Lap. And it's, as it sounds, it's partying, it's drinking, it's having a great laugh at university. And they came to me. I said, build an app. That's how you're going to make money. They had paper cards. That's so old school now. Let's put it all digital. They agreed. And they got a match grant from a university, but they needed the money to build the app. And at this time, I was averse to low code, no code, but I chose that I think they needed to build it from scratch because I thought it would grow incredibly quickly. And it's been worthwhile building it from scratch. So I invested in that company. And I also said, I'm an active investor. I'm a director as well, which is another thing which doesn't always happen. Investors might not be directors, so they might not have a say in anything. So actively engaging with that investment means guiding them through certain steps as well. They are a lot younger than me. They've done really well. But when things start to go down, it's about pushing them back up because I'm the one that's invested the most money, I guess, into it. So for me to lose out because there's a bit of a dip in sales, that concerns me as an investor, but also as a mentor and also as a director. So it's important to be able to push them back up and get them remotivated. And that's something which you'll find and clients that come on with us will find that we will, as investors and mentors, keep you going. We will keep you positive.
I think it's such a powerful message because in my background in sales, I found that the strongest possible selling technique I could ever have was to say no to a client. Why? Because I needed to be honest when I needed to be honest, right? If people think that you are bullshitting your way around business, or you're kind of deceiving them in any way, shape, or form, they'll back away and you'll not be seen as an authority figure. If on the other side you are completely honest and transparent when doing business, people do appreciate that a lot. And sometimes that does mean saying no. But then you justify your no. So this is why I'm not doing this. And it's completely fine if you decide to walk away. And I think when you have that message and you say that to people, they tend to stay and they tend to trust you and they tend to do business with you, right? Because it's such a powerful thing to do.
It is, yeah. And that's, that was another thing that I was going to say is that we do get, being low code, we do get a challenge of different people approaching us. And we do have to say no for several reasons. We're an agency, we employ, just going to get it out there because it's really important, but we decided to go with Ukrainian developers when the war broke out. And I think that is essentially, I'm allowed to be honest, they are more affordable than using UK developers. But that isn't the reason we went with them. We went with them because of the hardships that they were having over there for obvious reasons, losing their families, losing their friends. So for us to be able to support them as well, and they're actually part of our team, which is really, really massive. But at times we do have to turn around to clients and say, don't take the piss out of us. We're not going to build something. We're not going to discount that. We have to pay our bills as well. Because with low code, you do find a lot of self-employed developers that can just do it off the books by themselves and charge you, 10, 20, 25 pounds an hour. Whereas if you've got a full-scale business, you've got lots of people to pay, as you well know, you can't do it for that cheap. And nothing is cheap. And if you want the best product from someone, you've got to go with the right agency. And I think, it is really important. It is a powerful message. You do sometimes have to say no. But David and I will still give those people the time of the day and say, have you thought about this? Have you considered doing it this way? Will you change that? If you will, then we'll consider helping you throughout the whole process. That makes sense.
It's money well spent if you got that. It's the same thing when you go for a haircut, right? You're not going for someone to close the scissors by your hair and for the hair to fall down. You're going because you're looking for something that fits your face and for a specific style. Or when you go to the car mechanic, you go to the guy you trust because he's going to tell you know what, change this, don't change that, the other one. How do you drive? You drive back and forth to the supermarket. You know what? You're fine with that, those brakes or those tires or whatever it might be. And that does make a difference, right? And if you guys do that, or when you guys do that in business, I think it just sets you apart from the competition. Because again, you're not trying to sell. You're trying to, okay, how can we provide you with value and a good service, right? That's incredibly powerful.
So, for your target market as well, if you don't mind us asking, that would be quite a good one for Decodify, because again, it's such a broad market, because then suddenly you can have very, very niche, such as blockchain, Web3, deep tech, other things that don't really require that at this stage. But I guess, could you narrow it down?
Yeah. It is difficult to narrow it down, actually. We will take on a range of different ideas, building marketplaces, building SaaS platforms, working with individuals to help improve their website. There is a wide range, but we do focus on MVPs, on startups. That is where we are up to at the moment as a business. We are developing, but like I said, David and I want to support those MVPs, those people who are coming up with an idea and they want to build it from scratch. And that's where we come in, because you can take on a project that's already been half built, but then it's not your own. And you can, we've tried taking on other people's work before and tried to change it around, and they have issues with it, and they know what they're talking about and they don't know what they're talking about, and it's all very complicated. Whereas the market that we're looking for at this present time is, are you starting fresh? If you are, come to us and we'll guide you through the whole process from start to finish. That being said, we will take on other clients as well, and there are a few that we're working on that are possibly just past the MVP stage, but still need that guidance and maybe need bringing back to MVP level. But really, it is looking at that startup task.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I mean, we talk with a lot of people and we interview a lot of people also in the event. And it's funny how many of them kind of think that they can completely eliminate the MVP stage. Oh yeah, we don't need an MVP. Yeah, you kind of do. First, try out the concept, see if it does work, if there's a market for it, and then grow it out. Instead of saying, hey, we need £500,000 to build an app. We really don't. Right? Just go for a solution.
Yeah, and Ricardo, I mean, I attended your amazing event at the end of October last week, actually,
Yeah.
and it was fantastic to listen to all those people get up and pitch their ideas. But I was sat there at the back, just thinking to myself, right, you should be going back to MVP stage. Okay, you've got an idea, you're asking for £500,000. Have you got a proof of concept out there? No, you haven't. Okay, great. I understand that you want to build the most perfect looking app from the start, but actually, let's go back to basics here, guys, and let's build a proof of concept, because you're going to be far more investable in, or this is what I find and what David finds, if you have spent £5,000 to £10,000 building that initial product, putting it on the market, trying it with friends and family, getting feedback, and then saying, okay, to make this better, we're going to need another £20,000 to use the feedback from clients. So I think that a lot of the people that I listened to, whilst their pitches were absolutely fantastic in 60 seconds, my advice to them would be, come and see us, or come and see an agency that can help you start from scratch. Do not go for the big Facebook idea of spending £500,000 building a product. And interestingly, just very briefly on that £500,000 idea, my friend started an app when I started, and it was called Deliver Me, and it was on Dragon's Den. And they all said, you're running into a burning inferno, because they'd launched a version 1, but they'd spent 50 to 60,000 pounds building that with UK developers. They'd launched a version 1, and the proof of concept, the idea was, order anything you want from a city and get it within 30 minutes.
Ooh.
So have those drivers, right? I want a pair of Adidas trainers. I'm in the centre of Leeds. I'll order them through Deliver Me. And a driver that's out and about like you would with food will go to that Adidas store and collect them and take them home in 30 minutes. Now, whilst the concept may well be a good idea, they raised through crowdfunding, I think, around 2.8 million. And when they went on Dragon's Den, it's a really interesting pitch to watch if anyone's interested in watching it. But they were all told, how much is it going to cost to progress this to the next stage? And it was going to be between 50 and 100 million to get it out in every single city. But it had to be there for it to work. And the idea is good, but scale it way back and think, right, it's not food, because food's an overcrowded market. So let's think about it. Should it be technology products? Okay, let's focus on Currys and PC World and Apple in Leeds. Let's get them on board. Let's get people using it then. Then you start generating the income, you get the drivers on board, and then you can progress through the ranks and start saying, right, we can get food, we can get trainers in there, we can get Nike in there, all of those different products. And it failed. And I'm sure all of those people will have been insured, they would have got their money back. But some people invest as little as 20 quid, doesn't matter. But there are a lot of people in there investing 50, 60,000 pounds. And they just didn't have the proof of concept out there. And after Dragon's Den, they even had the balls to stand there in the interview afterwards and say, oh, we don't care what these dragons say. We know it's going to work. But yet when they presented those figures to the dragons, they were, like Stephen Bartlett said, running into a burning inferno. It was all over the place. And it was fantastic for a moment. They got all that marketing, sponsorship and all of that sort of thing. More people invested in the idea, but they hadn't thought about it. And their main goal was, if we can get an audience talking about this through marketing, we will build the money and we'll be able to build a product. Well, we talk a lot about getting an audience and getting the product tested, but they did this the wrong way. They did this the complete wrong way. And it's just an interesting example.
Yeah, but it's also a very competitive market. I think the problem with scalability and when you're building things for millions of people is that you need a lot of money to get to that stage. I mean, look at the first couple of interviews he had from Jeff Bezos from Amazon. And he was actually joking around with the fact that he didn't make any money. He was like, how can you not have any profit? You sell thousands of items. Billions of items. And he said, oh, that's okay. I keep on reinvesting back in the business, because he knew he needed to put a lot of money to grow to the stage where he is right now. And, those type of delivery apps, it's very hard to capture all that market, to make sure it's profitable, to compensate for the investment you have. It's very, very hard. And I think throughout Europe, there are so many delivery apps that have consistently lost money over and over until they got acquired by someone else and say, you know what, we're going to get all your customers, all your infrastructure for a tenth of what we would buy if we were to make it ourselves. So it makes sense.
I think Ricardo. I mean, I've just completed my master's in business and finance, and it was based around a company, and I chose Ocado for the reasons that obviously I tried and failed Gourmet to Go, which was an upper market version of that, and I did all my market research on every single food delivery company out there, and I can honestly tell you, not a single one of them are in profit. Not a single one of them, including Uber. Uber do well with their taxis, but their food, their profits, they're not making enough money to pay their investors back. And that's because the market is saturated.
Mm-hmm. No, it's. I think it's a very, very hard market. You know, it's like you said, completely saturated, and it's so hard because I think it's a bit like selling ketchup, isn't it? It's not an expensive product, but you end up always buying the same brand or very close to it, right?
Heinz.
So the profit margin is exactly. It's a tiny profit margin, and it's the same thing for all these companies. They're building gigantic things, but with a tiny profit margin. And if they think they're all going to be successful, it's not going to happen. Same thing with ketchup. We always go for Heinz, right? There's a reason. I mean, you can go for the supermarket one, which is sometimes as good as, but you're always going to go for Heinz at the end of the day. So
always, you do. And again, that brings it back to the importance of having a good name, having a good brand behind things. Mm-hmm. But you can't get to that point unless you've started with that your proof of concept. And I was trying to jump. I had the most amazing brand designer, I had the most amazing colors, graphics, everything was amazing. But who the hell are you, Gourmet to Go? We don't know you. And if I had been able to launch in hindsight, you know, I know if I gave myself some feedback on starting, it would have been start sooner, get the name out there, and utilize, I guess, COVID, which was how I would have been able to make my name. Now, it's very much going to be, it's never going to be what it could have been if I'd launched it properly during lockdown, because it's just going to be a smaller, sort of like a second business for myself now if I relaunch it.
Oh, you can always do something else, right? I mean, it's
True. I've got many ideas up here. Don't worry.
No, that's the thing with entrepreneurs is that it's never just one idea. It's never just a one-hit wonder, right? You always have 10 ideas going on your mind at the same time, and it's hard to select the one you're actually gonna work on. But then you always think, if this fails, that's okay. I got another 9 ideas I want to explore. And I think when you look at the biographies of very, very successful businessmen, you tend to find exactly that. They try one idea, this didn't work. Let's try something else. I'm thinking, Richard Branson, the many ideas he had and completely failed, like Virgin Cola, for example. We're actually talking about that, apparently he had a very, very decent, I never tried Virgin Cola myself, but he said, look, everyone liked it. It was much better than Coca-Cola. Okay. But why didn't you manage to win over the competition? Because it was Coca-Cola. I was giving pallets of drinks, and they were kitting out the shops with fridges and signs and all the things. I couldn't compete in that market, right? So, yeah.
And I think going back to that is the idea of I could have made something better from Gourmet to Go if I hadn't spent every single penny that I had of my money at the time, failing and not listening to that advice. I spend too much building that product from scratch. So if you are one person who comes to us with an idea, we will find an idea. If you're an investable person, don't worry, one of those ideas will definitely work. And that is a piece of advice that I will give anyone that has the strength and the ambition and the ability to come up with ideas, because not everyone can run their own business, come up with their own ideas. And if you've got an idea, come forward, speak to us, speak to Decodifi, speak to me, speak to the startup events. They'll all point you in the right direction. And from that, you fail once, but you won't keep on failing. And you will be given that advice to how you can succeed in one of those businesses, for sure.
Definitely, there's a lot of scope to move around, and I guess moving on to a slightly different subject is around something we mentioned from the very beginning, which was the ecosystems throughout the UK. And I'd like to kind of get your view, being based up in Leeds, of how would you say, or how would you compare it to London? Would you say it's more beneficial to be in a less competitive area, or is it more beneficial to be in a more competitive area because you have more connections, or less connections but they're more worthwhile? What would be your view on that?
And that's a good question, because I think every area is different, and it depends what your product or your market is. with technology, mainly they're online, aren't they? But having that network of people that you can speak to and connect with initially is really, really important. So during lockdown, if you're stuck in that bedroom in the Lake District and don't have a network of people that you can meet like this every single day and tell them about your idea and get feedback, you're going to struggle. But being in a city like Leeds is a big city, Manchester's a big city, you're always going to bump into people. You can go, if you work for yourself, you can go into little hub spots and chat to people there and grab a coffee. But the systems in London and the bigger cities are obviously going to set you up better, don't get me wrong. But wherever you are, there are an abundance of people like you that are looking for startup ideas, looking for opportunities, looking to connect with people, and they just need to get out there and make those connections, and it will work for them. So I know what you're trying to say about being in London and the importance, but I tend to disagree in the fact that it's not just where you are, it's who you are and your ability to connect with those different people. And I think that's really important. We would fly to the other side of the world to get business and to network with people. We certainly would do that. That's what we're like. We came to London to see you guys. It's not that far, but it was important that we network in a different area and people get to know who we are, and they don't just go to the standardized Google search engines to find people in their area.
Well, definitely, it's a good one on that side. And then one key feature that you mentioned quite a few times, even when you met us at the startups events, was how you also like to engage with universities, and universities being very influential in the business ecosystem. Would you say that's the same? Like work with a uni, kind of get in their early stage, get funding, get some traction, get brand awareness. Is that kind of a
absolutely?
key? Yeah.
They have a certain amount of money to give away to startup ideas every year, and it depends what you're looking at. So we're working with a client at the moment who's in the physiotherapy area, and she's been given a grant from just the standardized grants that you can get in the UK. But universities will give up they will do match grants, they will do startup grants. So, for example, Leglap, who I invested in, they were going to be given a £15,000 grant if it was matched to pay for the application. So they've just got themselves as a business £15,000 investment plus 15,000 that they can use to market the idea, to bring in those initial customers. So having that network within the university environment is really, really important. And it might only be £500 that they give you, but that £500 might be able to get you that sign-up list that I talked about earlier. It might get you your first 100 customers. You might be able to print your flyers. You might be able to build your brand on it. The Prince's Trust as well. They visit a lot of universities. They work with a lot of startups. These are the things that people need to be doing when they're starting up. And if people don't talk about them, if people don't go to these networking events, they're not going to find out these ideas.
Mm-hmm. No, completely. It's fascinating how much support is it out there, and how little people know about the support there is out there. And I think Harry helps a lot of businesses with grant applications and all that. And for me, it's always fascinating thinking, wow, we got so much support. And it's it's not that it's easy, but it's out there. Just go and look out for it, because you're going to find it. If it's the Princess Trust, if it's Virgin Startups, if it's some bank, they have their own startup programs and they're willing to invest. Just go out there and try to find it, because it will definitely make a difference for any business.
Yeah, it will 100%. And people need to be more aware of events like what you're doing. What you're doing is fantastic, and we discussed aiming it at a specific niche in the market, like any startup. What is that niche? What problem are you trying to solve? And like I said, that's looks like there's a market for MVPs. So that's where we're headed, and I think it's a really, really, really good market to be in.
Yeah, I think so as well. Yeah. Plus, events are always fun. We tend to talk with a lot of people, meet a lot of new faces. I have a blast. I think Harry also has a blast, and I think you also had a blast in the last one. So people watching
we
this,
certainly did. Yeah, certainly did. Come to the next event, definitely.
Yeah, it was good fun. So as we kind of bring this to our natural close, if people want to reach out to you, George, how can they do so? And please, this is a plug moment. So plug in the website, plug in the company. How can people find you?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, just George Thwaytes. The business is Decodifi. The website is just www.decodify.uk. So nice and simple to remember. Best way to get in contact is through LinkedIn, because we're doing a lot of offers on there at the moment for startups. We're also very active online on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. And again, of course, you can speak to Harry or Ricardo and get through to us through them as well.
Yeah. All right. Perfect. George, thank you so much for your time today. It was a pleasure talking.
No, thank you very much. Thank you both.
Well, thank you. All right. And